For everyone new here, a quick intro. So if you've not been on a LinkedIn Live before, it's like a Twitch stream. There's a chat. We're going to make it quite engaging. For example, where's everyone from? Everyone can say hello. I'm from Cyprus. Pontus, you're based in Bangkok. But originally, where are you from again?
I am good old Sweden and then Scandinavia.
Svenska. Nice. Thinking of going to Stockholm in a couple of weeks, actually. So that will be good times. Amazing. So everyone, meet Pontus. He's reviewed thousands of pitch decks, personally invested in 5+ businesses, and a man on many boards, multiple-time founder. Used to be an ex-pro at HON. Oh my God, what's the game HON?
Heroes in the Earth.
Heroes in the Earth. I was like, I know that. I know the acronyms. It's like, oh, it's not Dota, no. And yeah, so true gamer, so true of a gamer that he founded an esports organization at 16 years old, and he now helps PC and console companies valued up to 100 million as the co-founder of Agora Gaming Partners, global investment banking and advisory firm for games. Today, we're going to talk about the 2024 investment landscape, dealing with publishers' rights and wrongs. As a man who's seen many pitch decks, you can actually know what actually gets through, and also what it takes to secure investment step by step. Amazing. Alrighty. So we're going to get straight into it. There is going to be Q&A. So whoever's here, come say hello in the chat and get your questions in, and we'll collect them near the end. I already see people tuning in. So
lots of familiar faces. Yep.
Amazing. We've got Sven, Justin, Zeneb, Jason from Toronto, Irina from San Francisco, I believe. So we'll get straight into it. So just wanted to ask you about 2024 investment landscape. Why do you think so many companies are struggling in this specific year? I have an idea, but I think you have a better idea.
I mean, I think that's a topic that could probably last for several hours. And also there are a lot of subjective opinions, but I'll try, and also information that I quite frankly can't share because of insider information in a lot of companies. But maybe to backtrack a bit, and I think a lot of people will agree on this, is that COVID was really a really big problem because the industry got bloated. You know, the sales were a lot higher all over the place. People were staying at their houses, buying more games, playing more games, getting checks from the government to buy more games and so forth, depending on which country you were in. And another issue was because remote work became the norm, it was very easy to leave your company and find another job. And as somebody who has employed over 200 people now in my career, I saw this issue as well, where salaries were extremely inflated. Now, I'm not saying that's the same all over the world. Of course, there are particular countries where there was an even bigger inflation. But the point is that ultimately it became really unsustainable making games. I'm talking on a smaller scale, of course. Larger scale, I think you can all read the news, all the shutdowns, etc., and we can talk forever about whether we agree or not with Microsoft's decision of shutting down multiple studios, because I personally don't agree. And I'm very happy that one of them recently got acquired by Krafton, and they can actually keep making great games. But still, salaries got inflated, which made it really hard to continue to make games. And it was also, massively increased the amount of games being made. So the competition was getting fiercer. So I think, even though it may sound bad to say, I think we're in a situation where things will go back to normal levels again. And it's not fair to a lot of people, but I think at least we're starting to come down from those eras of having ridiculous salaries on a lot of people, including management, by the way, not just talking about employees, where you have to come down and actually put a lot of your own sweat and blood and your own cash to bring projects to a much later stage than before. I can continue going down that route, but I think you guys are probably more interested in the actual game funding part of it. So let me put it simply like this. If we take the mobile gaming industry and we look at the track record and the history of mobile games, it used to be in a case where you could get a paper pitch funded at any time. You had a cool resume, you came to an investor, you showed them a paper pitch, boom, you got money. That's how mobile games used to be, right? And then it became demo. And then it became later stage demo. And then it became vertical slice. And then it became data only. And we're still in that stage today where you can no longer find money in mobile games pretty much unless you started a massive company that grew to billions of dollars. You have some specific kind of algorithm, because people don't care anymore. They want to take as little risk as possible, which means you got to be as late in the process as possible, which is why we don't see a lot of mobile games. On top of that, there are ulterior factors like Apple and Google cracking down on GDPR and other things. But still, investors want to take less risk. And then we come to the problem of, okay, but if I have to fund my game all the way until the point where I have data for it, why do I need you?
Yeah.
Because if I've already proven that my game is going to work, why do I need an investor to give me?
Had this conversation with my client, so I'm very curious what the answer is.
Yes, so I don't have an answer on mobile. I have an answer on PC. But on mobile, I still, to this day, and this is why we don't really do mobile deals, because we don't know. How do I explain to a publisher that they need to make an exception when they continue to find games that are willing to wait until that point, that have all the data, that are willing to fund it there? I can't. So, I've been in situations where I have seen incredible mobile games. And actually, we did one in Global Top Rounds, is it 2 years ago now, I think? Maybe 3 years ago. A studio that not only had incredible resumes, had a great concept, the demo was super fun. They even had split studios, so to lower costs, they had a studio in Thailand and they had a studio in Portugal. So they were actually able to lower their costs, no inflated salaries, no nothing. And we co-invested with another VC out of Cyprus, and the data just wasn't getting there. And because the data wasn't getting there, we also didn't want to invest, right? Because there are many more cases, and we didn't want to double down. The other VC didn't want to double down either. And when we pitch publishers, they're like, oh, your day 1 retention is not good enough. Your day 7 retention is not good enough. And we're back to this whole story of wanting to get there. But if you look at the track record of the studio, they should have easily, with a year or 2 more, been able to do it. But it doesn't cut it anymore. You need to get there with your own sweat, like your own money in some way or form. Some crazy angels, or like in our case, Global Top Round, we came in very early. And it just makes it unsustainable for mobile games, which is why a lot of VCs that used to be mobile first or mobile only is actually looking at PC now as well. So that's something that maybe a lot of people don't know, but the VC mobile only are now starting to look at premium PC console because there aren't enough cases in mobile. And because they're not willing to fund them in those first 5 stages, once they get here, they can just find a publisher to finance the rest. And from what I've seen in most publishing deals that I've seen on paper, so not just rumors, like actual deals on paper, the deal terms have also changed to be to a point where most mobile publishers cover all your burn rate. They cover X amount of UA, whatever that may be, as a minimum guarantee. And then they do this for as long as it's viable. So it's quite healthy once you get there, right? But the problem is, how do you get there? And that I don't know. And that's why I don't have any advice whatsoever on mobile. And frankly speaking, that's why we don't really work with a lot of mobile developers, because it's just not something that I have an answer to. And I don't know how to fix the problem, because I look at the VCs and say, you don't know why you're not getting enough deal flow. I mean, your whole thesis is stupid. You're waiting until here and they don't need money there. So that's why you can't find deals. And from the publishers, I understand they want to lower the risk because they, tossed hundreds of millions of dollars into marketing, tried lots of internal and external games. They don't want to do that anymore. So I think there is a really, tough case for VC on mobile in today's market. But I am not the right person here to talk about mobile. And I'm sure there are way smarter people than me that you can listen to about this. But I wanted to give a comparison for this purpose. PC console today, right? Which again, we can also talk about for several hours. But we are moving towards the entertainment model, is what I normally say. So not mobile, but I wanted to give you an example of how a market kind of goes up and down, and eventually it's now kind of peaked over here. PC console is moving to a stage exactly like mobile, but also like entertainment, where you need to find, either with your own money or with angels or something else, enough money to build your pilot episode. Once you have your pilot episode in PC console, vertical slice, then you can go out and find co-financiers, whether that's publishers or investors or something else. In the last 3 years of my career, I have closed deals anywhere from paper pitches to demo to tech demo, all the way up to vertical slice and even pre-launch. It was honestly never really a matter of how late you were in the process. It was how good was the quality of that smaller game or the later game. And the only thing that changed was the deal terms. The later we were in the process, the better terms we got. In the last year and a half, though, this is no longer the case. And I'm sure every developer in this stream right now can basically tell you that, for those of you who don't have a vertical slice, I'm sure you're getting 95% of the publishers or VCs saying, come back later. And if you think about it, is it unfair? Not really. And let me go back to COVID. people were throwing money everywhere. If you were to just use Google or your network and you ask how many of these larger VC deals were successful during the COVID years, you'll find that that number is tiny, which means that most VCs, most private investors, most publishers have been bleeding money for 2 to 3 years now. They can't put that in their press releases and stuff like that, right? It doesn't sound good on paper. But that's why we're in this situation now where they bled and lost so many games and deals that they cannot take that kind of risk anymore. And now they want to get to this whole entertainment, pilot, vertical slice level to minimize that risk. Because they don't have the luxury anymore of all that extra money they gained from all their sales during COVID. And probably the management also wants them to take less risk. So we're really moving towards this. And that's why, frankly speaking, and we've said this to people who pitched us, that currently for Agora, we're a new company. We don't have the luxury of taking on indie developers without funding or without some sort of way to get towards that vertical slice. If you have a way to get there, we can help you. But otherwise, we're not big enough to do it. We hope in the future that we can help a lot of you who don't have funding or healthy businesses, but at the moment we can't for this reason alone. That our entire business builds on the fact that we can make you business, and we're noticing that the whole landscape wants to get to that vertical slice level, and that's why we only take 6 clients and why we focus on a smaller amount. And I know I've been talking nonstop. You can.
No, it's just good. Yeah, I'm about to. No.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Finish the point.
Yeah. So on the PC console side, we have noticed, and I did a speaker session about this at DevCon, where we did a research on all publishers. We spoke to a lot of people. We spoke to publishers themselves. We spoke to developers. We emailed a bunch of people to try to gather as much data as possible. And obviously, for NDA purposes, I can't say what publishers, their names, etc. But I can tell you this: that from 2+ years ago, where we had budgets all over from 500K to 100 million. And like I said, it really just came down to the resumes and the quality of the demo and the pitch deck, and that's it. Nowadays, we heard that about 60% of the publishers can only finance 1 million and below. That number used to be a lot smaller. So about 60% can only go below 1 million. I should have had my slide in front of me because I don't remember all the numbers in my head now, but 60 below 1, I think it was 20% up to 2 million. And then there was 10% kind of between the 2 million and 10 million. And then, of course, the 10% that isn't relevant for a lot of you is the large AAA, AA space where you do a lot of code dev and multiple investors. So the landscape has really changed towards less than 1 million. And if there are like AA and AAA developers in this chat, that's not for you. Right? It's going to be really hard for you to find a publisher because the list is so small. Because we're not just talking about the 100% of publishers, it's also the amount in each genre. So in FPS, right, there are a lot of publishers who does FPS, but if you're a strategy simulation game, there aren't a lot. There's, let's say, Hooded Horse, Modern Wolf, Datalic, and stuff like that. But if you then continue searching on the simulation genre, out of those, let's say, 15 to 20 publishers that does that genre, maybe only 2 can fund over 2 million. So really, when you look at the whole list from 2 to 3 years ago, it's only maybe 5 to 10 that will fit you above 1 million USD in funding. And that's why so many developers are stuck, because that number used to be a lot higher. People would sign more games. They would sign a lot of different genres, which they don't really do anymore either. And they would have 2 or 3 times the team, because there's been a lot of layoffs. And a publisher doesn't want to oversign because then they can't put the right amount of effort into the game. So again, I can continue, but that's basically from the mobile. We learned in the last couple of years that it wasn't sustainable. And that's why they're now at this larger stage. I want data. I don't think we'll ever get to that point in PC console, because getting data in PC console isn't as easy as doing a Facebook ad and testing retention. But data is getting important in PC console too. We're having a lot of publishers ask us for market research or like playtesting data or stuff like that, which used to not be the case. But still, that happened to mobile, and we're entering the same phase with PC console. So the takeaway here is that if you're watching this and you're sitting on a tech demo or a demo and you're spending thousands or $10,000s of traveling to events and doing business development, your chances are down by 80% compared to a year or 2 years ago. You should try to get as far as you can without funding or with personal connections or angels or family money before you start, or you risk wasting your time. Now, on the positive note, I want to add one final thing there. This also means that eventually there's going to be a gap, because all the publishers have KPIs to sign X amount of games in their so-called slate. So let's say 5 games 24, 5 games 25, 5 games 26. And if they're not signing games right now, what do you think is going to happen when their leaders come and tell them a year from now that, hey, where are our games for 25 and 26? And because developers are dying over and over like flies because nobody's funding them, there's going to be a shortage of games. So what's going to happen then? Are we going to be in another craze like 2-3 years ago where everything gets signed just on a paper pitch, just to hit those KPIs? Or have people learned their lesson, and maybe a couple months from now, they'll start taking more risks again? I don't have a crystal ball, but that's a good question.
It's a good question. I think that was lovely because we set the scene there a little bit, and we've actually got some good questions in the chat. So this is the podcaster thinking out loud. I want to make this quite flexible. I've got topics to cover, but there's an important question there, which was relative in what you said. So someone from the chat, it doesn't say the name, but I would love to understand from your point of view, the difference between a publisher and a VC today. It was apparent a few years ago, and you used them in different parts of your kind of setting the scene there. So like, if I'm looking for money, full stop, how should I view a publisher? How should I VC, like as of today? And has that changed?
Yeah, so I mean, when you're looking at a VC, you have to understand that a VC has a mandate of doing certain things. And that could mean, like mobile only, as I mentioned earlier. And because they ran into issues, they had to change that mandate and talk to their LPs and, kind of move things around. But a VC is looking for unicorns. They're looking for 10, like 100Xs that will pay back the whole portfolio.
Minimum 10X?
Yes, minimum 10X. Nothing less. I mean, like really, like there is, unless you're a pre-seed VC that has a thesis/target of like coming out with a 3 to 5X on the whole fund, you need a 10X or higher. Because think about this, guys, that 80 to 90% of the investments that happen will die, always. So you need that 10 to 20% that you do to actually pay back all of them. And if you only do a 3 to 4X per company, that's not going to pay back the whole fund. So from a VC standpoint, they want a minimum 10X, and they want something that they call, that I'm sure you've heard, VC investable. And what does that really mean? Well, that means that if you're doing a premium game that has, and we just talked about genres and stuff. Let's say that you're making a city builder game. And to put an average kind of audience there, I would say that your limit is probably 1 or 2 million copies as a smaller studio. And that's a really good case. You're like very, very excited. Now, if you're on an indie budget level, you're probably selling your game at $19.99, $24.99. Remember, you have to take off 50% refunds, chargebacks, the Steam fee, taxes, whatever it may be. So if you sell 20 million gross, you have 10 million net in your bank, right? That's what you have after all the general fees. And then you have your personal taxes in the countries and blah, blah, blah. Well, let's assume that it's 10 million net. If it took you 3 to 4 years to make this game, and you now have $10 million in net revenue, let's assume that the production budget of that then is probably 4 to 5. That means that your actual profit on this game is only $4 to $5 million. And now you have to make your next game, which takes another 2 to 4 years. In what equation can a VC sell you for $50 or $100 million in this scenario? 0. Because you're basically making a premium game every 2 to 4 years, and it's just not sustainable. That's why a lot of these premium studios end up acquiring EBITDA and buying other companies, buying Codev and stuff to bump up all their other regular numbers to guaranteed recurring revenue. And then if you're lucky, you build an IP that takes off, right? Like if you take Warhammer, they live off their IPs nowadays, right? They just license it out. People make games. They make a buttload of money. So really, even at a 1 million copies sold in a city builder at $20 like SRP per copy, you have 10 million net, and then you take into all the production you've done and the next game, it's not VC investable. So you have to have something that could really bump you by either having multiple productions, 2, 3, 4 pipelines at the same time, where maybe you have like a AAA, or AAA is wrong in this case, so let's say a AA or AAA, whatever you want to call it, as your big budget games, 5 to 10 million. And then you have a couple of these crazy ideas that you spend 1 to 2 million on, and then maybe an indie darling where you do experiments, and that budget is between 500K to 1 million. That means you have multiple potential revenue streams. You're probably launching one game a year, and there is a big chance here for a breakout success. But how many of you can afford that? None of you. So you're going to a VC asking them for a $2 to $5 million check that you'll use to spend the next 3 to 4 years to build a game that even at 1 million copies nets you 10 million. That does not work. And that's why 80 to 90% of all the VCs invest in games as a service companies.
Where it's free to play. They need that recurring revenue, like what you said, like the co-dev to me, it's like, sweet recurring revenue, which makes the gambling kind of more morally okay, like the big premium here.
Yeah, they want free to play, they want live ops, they want like recurring revenue. If you find the right audience, you continue to scale, you do a really good job on it. And it also goes, when you take VC money, guys, you also have to remember that you need to pay them back. You know, even if they own a portion of your company, even if they own 10, 20, 30% of your company, your job is to pay them back first. And some of the contracts will even have preferred shares and stuff like this, or even a preferred dividend if you're going to pay out dividends. And there are many things that you give up by taking VC money, which is why we normally advise most of our indie clients or the budgets below 2 to 4 million to work with publishers first. Figure out what you want to do, you know, like really nail into the genre or the type of game or the type of mechanics that really is going to be your expertise so that you can perfect it and eventually you self-publish. Because I just gave you an example of self-publishing a game. Now imagine we take that 1 million copy case and we toss a publisher into the mix. That 10 million net is maybe now 5 million net. Yeah, there really isn't a lot of money available.
And that's also a great scenario as well, like the 1 to 2 million copies. So
exactly.
Just to...
Yeah, I need to answer the VC part of the question, I guess, Sarah. Sorry. So you mentioned the difference between publisher and VC. Yeah, so VC 10 to 100x, that's what they're targeting. Now, on the publisher side, they're only looking for a 3x. And that includes all of their internal costs. So that's something that a lot of developers that we talk to, I mean, nowadays we work mostly with seasoned developers, but at GTR, right, we had a lot of indie. We did over 60 investments. So, you know, I've had this conversation more times than I can count. When they think that the publishers is being unreasonable. And then you see all these Reddit threads and the LinkedIn threads about publishers being the worst and screwing me over and blah, blah, blah.
I hear it firsthand at the events as well.
Remember, guys, so let's do some simple math again. 500K investment from the publisher, let's say, right? That's what they're going to give you for your game because that's the money you're looking for. And for simplicity, let's assume you're an indie darling and that's your whole budget. So they fund your whole game in this case. They fund your whole game, that's 500K. Now they have their own salaries to pay for. Your game is probably going to take 2 years to produce. There's going to be a producer assigned to you, marketing manager, brand manager, etc. Over the first year and a half, probably not a lot of internal cost. But then stacking up towards the release date, when you have everybody involved in all the departments, you have all the QA, localization, and the whole thing, we're probably talking, let's say, $300,000, $400,000 of internal investment costs, depending on the game. If it's a simple indie darling, it's a lot less, but just for simplicity. So that's 900,000 USD invested by the publisher to the state. They want a 3x, right? Now remember that 50% of the revenue instantly disappears through Steam. So if we sell $2 million, and assuming the publisher recoups 100-0, which is bad terms for you, try not to sign that, but let's assume they take 100-0, then they're break even at that 2 million revenue, basically. From gross revenue 2 million, they are now break even. Now, 2 million for an indie darling, again, because most of your pitches I see in my inbox are $14.99 games, $19.99 games. That still means that you have to sell 100,000 plus copies. Now, at the bare minimum, and if you look at the Steam charts, not a lot of games get that far. So many of you, when you pitch people like myself or publishers, do not understand simple math. I'm not trying to be mean. You need to, there are free models online, by the way. So you can actually Google forecasting templates. You can, if I had one in my head right now, I'd just post it in the chat. But there are a lot of models you can look at where if you take your budget, you estimate, let's say 25% of your budget is how I normally calculate, would be the publisher's internal cost on top. And then they want to make a 3x on it. And you want revenue from day one. You don't want 100-0. That's not fair, right? I mean, it's your game too. So let's say 80-20 for the sake of it. You may need 150, 170, 200,000 copies for the publisher to break even, and they want to make a 3x. Now we're looking at 500, 600,000 copies. This is why it's so hard for most of you to get deals, because you don't consider the fact that taxes, chargebacks, refunds, internal costs from the publisher, and then you all go and shit talk the publishers publicly. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of bad ones. But the beautiful thing about this industry, I think, is that you can talk to people like myself, Harry, and many others for free and simply ask, have you heard about this publisher? Have you worked with them? What's your feedback? Go on their Steam page, talk to some developers that they've signed before. Yeah. Talk to both the ones that they did a good job with, so the games that sold a lot, and talk to the ones that didn't sell well. Get both sides of the story, right? So you can really understand if this is a good publisher to work with. Super, super important. Going back to the rev share. Now, if we were to remove all emotions from the entire equation, don't you think it's fair that a publisher that funds 100% of your game, technically, in theory, gets 100-0? They're taking all the risk. They're paying your food, your rent, all your salaries. And worst case scenario, the market tanks, you go ahead and you live your day. The publisher loses $600,000 to $1 million in the game.
That sounds fair from my side, apart from the fact that you're selling the IP, I guess, if the idea is so good.
Yes. So again, I would say never sign a 100-0. But my point here is that if you think about it logically, all emotions away, if you were to ask the bank to fund something 100%, you have to pull up collateral, right? You have to put your house, you have to put your car, you have to put any other assets you have. And if you don't pay back the loan, poof, all your shit's gone. With a publishing deal, you lose nothing. All the risk there is on them if the game fails. So I just want you guys to remember that when you negotiate. Now, back to my rev share point. I still don't think it's fair for 100-0 because, if you look at the Steam payout and all these things, you still need to pay yourself post-launch, no matter how much money the game makes. So it's never fair for a publisher to have 100-0, I think, personally. But I want you to remove the emotions when you think about both the VC and publishing side of things, dumb it down to numbers, and then you can add emotions after that, right? Really understanding how these deals work and why it's hard for you to close. So if we quickly jump back again to my tiers of 1 million, 2 million, and 2 million and above, you should also think that, okay, so the more money I ask for, the more money I have to sell my game for, because that means that it's more, faster to recoup for both of you. But your game also has to fit that level of graphical quality or the level of mechanics. You can't sell like a tiny top-down pixel game that you spend $500K on for $40 a copy. It's not going to work. So all of these things come into account when you build your pitch deck and when you pitch somebody. So yeah, that's the difference between publishers and VCs. They have all this risk that you don't consider, and they also take all that risk in most cases. Most pitches I get, the developer asks for 100%. Nowadays, I'm seeing quite a lot of people, talking about 20 to 30% investing of their own cash, which is great. It's getting better. And on my side, I'm seeing a lot of developers saying this is how much cash I'm putting up. And of course, they're asking for better terms because they're putting their own cash into the pile. But yeah, maybe I just saw a comment here from Jason. Sorry, but I'll find the forecast model later. And by the way, Agora, we're working on a template ourselves that we're going to give to the public for free. So we'll come out with our own when we have time. We just launched a free pitch deck the other day, I think. I don't remember. And we're going to do this for everything, including forecast models in the future.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I hope I answered your question, LinkedIn user. He seems to be anonymous.
He came up anonymous for some reason. Lovely. Yeah. Just for the chat, guys, I've collected everyone's questions, so we will get to them. I just have a few Harry Foku questions. So the example you gave where they make the premium game for $20, this doesn't include stuff that people can buy after the game. So we have does every game have to be free to play and then have those kind of, I'm just putting myself in the shoes of an indie developer. I want to spend $500K on a game. Like you said, I appreciate where the publishers are at. We need to make money. So why don't I make a premium game and then, quote unquote, bank on microtransactions of some kind, whether it be like a premium DLC that comes later? Is that something that's included in pitches, or should I just stop and just do a different genre?
No, I mean, that's of course also included in pitches, but it's still not VC investable. It sounds more like a publisher case or a product finance case, because that's something we didn't talk about. There's also the product finance part or the direct project investment that you can find from many different places. Or if you have good cash flow, you could get some debt financing from a bank like I talked about. Yes, you have to put up collateral, but still, if you don't like to work with publishers and if you're not VC investable, you can find money in other ways too. But microtransactions is something that players really don't like. They like to support their game, their favorite games with skins and stuff and DLCs, of course, but it's still not something that's going to give your company a valuation of $100 million. It really isn't. So it's super tough to reach that point.
Are we saying, wait a minute, sorry, the Fortnite of the world in my head runs off skins, but are we saying that likelihood is so low that we shouldn't count it as an example?
No, I mean, Fortnite, I think, is, in my opinion, the best designed game of all time when it comes to live ops. They nailed it in every way or form. It's free to play. It has 100 of different game modes. It has UGC. It has licenses. It has partnerships with every single IP that you can find
in a league of its own, basically.
Yeah. So whatever you personally think about the gameplay, or if you don't like Fortnite, or if you think it's annoying, it's for kids or whatever, you're wrong. It's a incredibly smart design game, period. And they've done everything right. And it's also extremely hard to replicate. Because one of the things about humanity is that we're flock animals, right? We like to follow the trends.
Mm-hmm.
So because Fortnite's so popular, even if another game comes out, it's highly likely they'll come back to Fortnite again anyway, until there ultimately is somebody who dethrones them. But yes, if you have microtransactions, if you have skins, if you have all that kind of stuff, that's fine. I think the one thing people dislike, and I don't have data for this and I could be wrong, is of course pay-to-win elements. Outside of Asia, Middle East, over here, we love pay-to-win. Give me some pay-to-win over here.
I'd say mobile games as well. Like, I don't know, like I see Diablo Immortal. I don't know how much money they make in America, but that is a mobile game that's a mobile game, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. But no, so premium, I mean, I'm a huge fan of premium games. So I just want to be clear here and say that I'm not saying you guys shouldn't make premium games. That's my bread and butter. Like, that's mostly what we work with, premium games. But it's also why we're not really working with VCs at the moment, because it's so hard to find. There is I can probably count on my two hands the amount of pre-seed investors at the moment that are institutional, meaning that they're a licensed fund or they're a private equity smaller company that could do investments in pre-seed, or accelerators. And actually, there's one in the chat right now from Grigory Bortnik, who I've known for some time now. They're an accelerator who could do a pre-seed check. You can type it yourself, Grigory, but yeah, they're good people, good company, and there are some people that could give you checks between 50 to 300K ish that are institutional in a way or form, but it's not a lot. But again, those guys get involved in evaluation so early that they still have that potential of a 10x or more, because most accelerators / pre-seed investors come in at a valuation below 5, and premium game companies, if you look on again just the public markets, a lot of them get acquired between the valuation of 20 and 50. The really successful ones get acquired around there. But and also, guys, VC funding does not mean success. I don't really want to call something out, but it's public information. So if you look at Singularity 6 and a game called Palia.
I'm Googling it.
Yeah, so Singularity 6 or a game called Palia. This is a great example, and it's not a bad game. So I'm sorry, developers, if any of you are here. I apologize. I'm not calling you out. But they got $49 million in VC funding, if I'm not mistaken. I will have to Google myself now. Let me see. I think, $49 million over 3 rounds. And I hope I don't give any. I hope this is not under NDA. I think their acquisition is public, right?
This is live, so I won't push you to say anything.
Yeah, there we go. Daybreak acquired. Oh my God, I thought I messed up there. Is the price public?
I'm looking on Crunchbase now.
Okay, the price is not public, so thank God I Googled it first. Oh my Lord.
What is the takeaway? What is the takeaway for us?
The takeaway is that even if you have a lot of VC funding, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to exit at hundreds of millions of dollars or be super successful.
Mm-hmm.
God, sometimes I need to keep track of my comments.
We just get excited. That's all. So they raised a lot of money.
Yeah, they raised 49 million.
What happened with it?
And yeah, the game was not an instant success. Daybreak, who acquired them, has done a really good job, I think, of reviving it. And in my opinion, it's a really good game. but
Okay.
it definitely is not, at the 49 million or above, and it hasn't done that well to date. But again, going back to VC funding, guys, 49 million. I mean, I don't know if their valuations are public, and even if they weren't, I don't know what valuations people invested in them at. But since 49 million was the total investment, we would assume that they're worth over 100 million, or they would have lost a lot of their company. So in total, they reached that level where VCs are looking for, but in the end, all of them got, lost a little bit of money in that case.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to bring this to
let's change the
things we can do. Yeah, because I feel like we've set the scene a little, but I want to go into, because you mentioned rights and wrongs a little bit, but I want to just talk about step one. So I appreciate we're talking about investment, but from the sound of it, there's not much VC activity actually going to happen for most people here, right? Yeah, so we're dealing with publishers. You mentioned you get a lot of pitches. I'm guessing you can't reply to all of them. And some people just don't know what they don't know. So what is the number one mistake that you're seeing right now?
Right. If you don't mind, I just want to jump back to a previous comment, if that's okay with you.
Go for it, and then we come back to this.
Yeah, because one of the audience did not understand my question here, I think. And he asked, I don't understand how the publisher is paying developers bills when they're only cutting checks for almost complete games. Can you clarify what publishers fund today? I think you misunderstood me. Basically, the publishers are looking at later stages. That doesn't mean they're just funding finishing games. I'm talking about games with about 2 to 3 years of production left. So we're still talking about a very long production cycle. I'm not saying 3 months from launch. Most games in the budgets below 5 million, when a publisher gets involved at a vertical slice stage, is still a larger investment. So it's still like a really long period where they're paying most of your bills. But of course, if you got to the vertical slice, you've already invested some money, which brings me back to what I said earlier about you having better terms. The more money and the more effort you put into your build, the better you can negotiate with a publisher. So that's what I meant. I'm not, if the publisher comes in at the absolute end, if you give out 80-20, I'll be very angry with you.
Yeah.
Come on, man. If you so there is a misconception maybe between a distribution company and a publisher, which for you guys might be the same. But as a distributor is somebody who manages all of your stores, all of your campaigns, maybe puts in some marketing, etc. But basically is your effective manager to make as much money as possible on your stores. But they don't run your game. Usually a distribution company takes between 10 and 20%. They don't, like in total, overall. They don't take the 50 or the 80 or the 100.
Is that funding marketing? Did you say funding marketing?
Depending on the distribution company, but we're talking small checks. So I recently closed a distribution deal, actually, where I believe they're putting in 100K in marketing. And even during recoup, it's like 50-50, and then it goes down to a lower number.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
So, I mean, distribution companies that come in at the end, for example, we have Plugin Digital, we have Ripples Asia in Singapore, we have Whisper Games in China, just as 3 examples where they can be the full publisher, they can do the full publishing model, or they can just do the distribution part where they take a much smaller rev share. Now, again, for the publishers, if they come in at the end, it all comes down to negotiation. So again, if we remove emotion, go to the paper. If you put in $1 million and they're coming in at the end only putting in, let's say, 500K, of course, I think it's still fair to give them like a higher rev share of recoup. So they get to recoup first because they're still getting you to that finish line. They're bringing in all the expertise, etc. But in the end, the rev share should be skewed in your favor, right? Because you actually put in more money than them and you got the game there. So, sorry, can you re-ask your question now?
No, good to clarify. So the question is, you get all those pitches, and I'd imagine you can't reply to every single one of them. So
no.
I just want to start with the number one mistake you see in the majority that hopefully we can nip in the bud for some people in a pitch.
Yeah, I mean, that's really tough because I think it's super subjective, and what I say is not going to be accurate with a lot of people. But for me, it really comes down to the budgeting, how you like built it all out. So what I mean by that is a normal red flag for me is too much money or too little money. Now I'm not an investor anymore, I guess, per se, but I'll speak from on behalf of an investor / publisher. Not knowing how much money your game requires is a really big red flag. So if you're coming to me with a budget of, let's say, 500K, and I instantly can see that this is impossible, it means that you maybe don't have the right producer on your team, or you're missing some major capacity for me to actually give you any type of money. And I'll give you 2 examples. First one was a studio in GTR called Point Blank Games that we invested in a couple of years ago, 6 years ago. They came to us with that really small budget, and they said, "Hey guys, we're making this Souls-like or action RPG game, and 500K." And I looked at them and I was like, "No, not happening."
So how did you know that instantly?
By playing the demo and looking at the roadmap. And I'm not a producer even, but I just looked at this and I knew instantly that this is wrong. And then of course I had advisors. It wasn't just my opinion, it was our internal team and the whole thing. But instantly, just by myself, I was like, no. And then I want to validate my opinion because I'm not a producer. I'm not going to pretend that I know what I'm talking about in that regard. So it's always important to validate. And I told them, and I asked them, sorry, I didn't tell them, why did you put the budget this way? And that's when the red flag disappeared, because they said, we tried to pitch it over 1 million. Nobody wanted to give us money because we're a new indie studio. We tried to pitch it around 750K. Everybody still thought it was expensive. And at 500K, we got some offers. So then I said, okay, well, the problem is that, your whole deck, your whole case, you're building out, it's not showing confidence. You don't have any advisors. You're completely fresh on the market. So we gave them some money to improve the demo. And then we went out to publishers with them, new pitch decks, new budgets, and everything.
Oh, interesting.
And these guys are absolutely amazing. It's one of my favorite people in the industry still to date. But we pitched some publishers, and basically the publisher said, come back to us with a vertical slice. And I was so certain that this game was of high quality, even though it was a new indie studio, that I told our management, let's double down and let's bring in some angels. So we raised 300K, and then we got some matching money from the government, I think, from Germany. And we went back to the publishers and we got signed in 2 weeks with the vertical slice. And I can tell you, I can't say the number, but it was a very large 7-digit number that we ended up getting for the studio. And that was because once they had, gotten into the groove, once the whole production plan had been revamped, and once they actually put in the game they wanted to make, we got to the real number, which was a lot higher and was fair and doable. So for them, it wasn't a red flag based on the answers that they had. So it's good, always be honest. The thing is, if you speak to a publisher or an investor, lying or not being honest is going to set you back completely. Either you won't be talked to at all, or you're just going to lose the deal on the spot. So just always be honest. So red flag, too little money. Red flag, also too much money. I hate when I see, especially countries, guys. I mean, everybody knows that there are certain, let's say, called average salaries in each country. And of course, we want you guys to have living wages. So never, ever, and that's why I talk about too little money, put yourself at a wage that isn't livable. If I see a Swedish person put in a $2,000 salary in their budget, I'm like, nope, not touching that, not investing. Because You can't live on that type of money in Sweden. But on the flip side, if I see a person putting in $15,000 to $20,000, I'm like, you're making an indie game, it's a little bit too high. Or in the case that I wanted to mention, in Malaysia, where we found a game that we really loved, they had put in an average salary of 8,000 USD per person. And the average salary in Malaysia is 1.5 to 2. So it's clear that they just wanted to make money on margin so that when they launched the game, they already would have made 3 to 4 times the actual production budget of the game. Super big red flag in general on the number side. And that brings me to, it's not a red flag because sometimes you just don't know. So in the beginning of this podcast, we talked about how much break-even copies you need and the publisher investment and all this kind of stuff. If you weren't aware before, I would highly advise you to listen to what I said at the beginning of this talk and go back and look at your pitch decks and be like, okay, remember, cut 50% off whatever my SRP is. Look at the publisher investment, whatever it may be. Now you have your real number. It's not just the money you're asking for. It's on top of the the publisher investment, and also the fact that the copies are going to be 50% less in net revenue. And you're going to have a very big different number in your deck. Now, if you have all this nailed down, you're talking about right and wrongs, I love to see it. When we see decks where they've clearly done their research, they clearly understand the risk, they know what they're asking for, and they know what the fair terms are, this is great. So if you're an indie developer with not a lot of experience, there are a lot of people who give you advice for free. There are a lot of guides, a lot of talks that you can listen to get better at it. And honestly, you could probably send your pitch deck as a test. So I like to say, this is not a right or wrong. This is a cheat code. What I like to say is, if you're pitching a publisher or an investor, build a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 list. Tier 3 is the ones that you are not certain about. Maybe there's not enough information, whatever. you're going to reach out. You send them the pitch deck first. And whatever they find, whatever red flags, whatever Q&A they have, everybody else will find too. That means you can now identify most of the issues that you have, and then you can clean them up before you go to your tier 2 and your tier 1 list. Tier 1 meaning the ones that you really, really want to work with, and that goes into the right tab. When you come to, well, I'll have to go back to Global Top Run. When you came to Global Top Run and you said why you wanted to work with us, and you showed because you do this, you provide that, instant green flag. Love it. Same thing for publishers and investors. If you tell a particular VC, oh, I saw you invested in these 2 companies that fits me, I need the same kind of advice, I need a production help, or you have a co-working space I can use, we need an office. Whatever information you can add in this tier 1 list will increase your so-called green flags and give you a higher chance of being signed. And on the publisher side, that would mean the crossover audience, right? So an easy example is you have a game similar to Manor Lords, you want to work with Hooded Horse because you think that Hooded Horse can transfer their audience to your game. Add 1 or 2 slides on that, right? These are some little rights.
It shows you've done your homework, and people like that, I'm guessing.
But of course, you can't do this for everybody. If you did 50 individual pitches, you would spend all your time building decks. So usually tier 1 is 5 to 10. And then tier 2 is all the ones that you would love to work with, but you simply don't have the time, and you'll have to send them a generic pitch. This is a good way of structuring your pitch times. So get your budget right, get your risk right. It really comes down to risk. Like I said, the gaming industry is moving towards the entertainment industry, which means a mutual risk. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but when you see a Netflix original, do you think Netflix funded that whole movie themselves? No. Do you think they funded the whole TV series themselves? No. Always co-investors, right? So the entertainment industry is usually somebody funds the pilot and gets it going, and then comes another investor on top, and then comes the producer company and everything else, and boom, all together, you form 100% of the budget, you launch it, you share the revenue. The gaming industry is moving in a similar fashion, where you can no longer get free money, you can no longer do stupid pitches, is the wrong word, but you get what I mean. You can no longer put in minimal effort. You really have to show what you're capable of. And I know it's not fair. I wish 100 more games would be signed every day, but this is what you're dealing with. This is the facts. This is not my opinion. This is what we've been speaking to.
It's the current landscape, exactly. I think, especially when you're looking at 10 pitches, or the green screen went down. Amazing.
This is no green screen here, I think.
Thanks for flexing on me that you have an actual background where I'm in my bedroom. Because like you said, it's just competition, right? Like we would go for you if we had no choice, but we have choice, so you have to be the best of those choices.
Yes. So I guess right and wrong both comes down to budget. I think there are many rights and wrongs that we could talk about, but I would say the number one thing is understanding risk management. And that comes down to your production as well. Like, it's okay to have delays. It's okay to have buffer, Honesty really is the key in every industry, but especially in games, where you need to let people know what's going on before, during, and about to launch. We're talking the whole spectrum, while pitching, while in the middle of development. And I actually had one of my developers the other day, which I'm very actually not related to Agora, one of my private investments. They messaged me 2 days ago asking, hey, we don't think we're going to hit the milestones with the publisher on time. What do we do? Great question. And I haven't answered them yet. I need to do that. But my answer to them is going to be very simple. The fact that you're even asking me this question shows exactly the level of honesty that's required. You're going to make a report exactly why you're not able to deliver on time, how much extra time you need, extra money if necessary, and of course, ask the not very good question, how will this impact my rev share? Or is there any cutback from this?
I'm guessing this is quite common as well for people to remember.
Oh, very common.
Yeah. And I think it's also, I have intel. It's like some people leave it very last minute because they think they can save it, but then they don't. So, like, to your point, I think this shouldn't be that super scary, right?
No, and I think that I've been in this situation in my past career probably 8 or 9 times now with the investment we made. And I would say all of them in the first time they asked for money, because I've been in a couple of cases where that didn't happen once. But all of them the first time had no reductions in their rev share, no penalties, no nothing. The publisher was super happy about the transparency, and they agreed, and we pushed the launch date and all this kind of stuff. Everything is great. As long as you're transparent and you give heads up and you always deliver real reports, your investors will be happy. This goes for investors too. your publishers will be happy, and so forth. So when we're talking about dealing with people, honesty is key. If you're running out of cash, tell people now, 6 months before, 9 months before, not 3 months before. You always got to look ahead and risk manage. We can continue on the right and wrongs. It's up to you. Or
I want to do, before we go into some quick fire on the Q&A, because I've collected a few questions. You told an interesting story where you found a game you liked. They misbudgeted the game, but you had confidence in the game. Then you invested a small amount to get them to the vertical slice, and then got the publisher. Okay, well, I go and playtest games at Gamescom. I think a lot of those people were in that situation, but I don't know if they're actively thinking, oh, let me raise money to get the vertical slice to then go to a publisher. Is that still a possibility today? Like, can someone have that as their goal?
I still think there are a lot of angels. So I mean, I've been getting a couple recently. So I want to make it very clear, guys. It says angel investor on my profile, but I'm really poor right now. I put all my money in Agora. Okay, so I cannot get any tickets. I have no money at the moment. But no, there are a lot of people like me. Actually, I used to run an angel group with about 87 of us in the group. I haven't had time to nurture that group or provide any deal flow in a very long time, and it was not a business model. It was just straight up deal sharing. Yeah. And sorry.
No problem.
And a couple of those people were co-investors in that particular case that I just mentioned. But there are a lot of us. There are a lot of angels willing to put in 10 to 20 to 30K tickets, maybe even up to 100. And there are a couple of accelerators / pre-seed investors that could come in with that 100 to 250K. And unless you live in San Francisco or LA or anything of this sort, most of you can survive on quote unquote normal salaries, which means that the money of, let's say, if you raise $500,000 to 1 million, can bring you to that vertical slice level. That is still very much doable. And you're probably wondering, but Pontus, you said it's not VC investable, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely not the same case. For me as an angel investor, I have done seven to date. I may have more. Oh. I think it's 7. It's either way. No, sorry. Yes, I've done 9. 2 are dead. 7. So 7 alive today. I invested in my first one in 2018, so that's almost 6 years ago. There is still no news of any exit. I don't care, because my job, I'm not a VC. I'm not looking for a 100x. This studio has given me so many other things, access to new network. I've learned a lot. I've been part of the production. Recently, actually, I helped being part of the design of one of their games as a kind of hobby kind of thing, because I enjoyed it. Like, it's giving me a lot of happiness, I guess is the right word, or maybe a bit cringe,
satisfaction,
but whatever. Yeah, satisfaction is the right word. And I don't need to exit in 5 to 6 years or whatever. It would be nice. And the day they get sold, I'm going to hopefully be a very happy man. If they die, then shit happens. We're investing, right? But out of those 7, 3 of them have already gotten buyout offers, and it's not big multiples. One of them, I think, was a 5x. One of them was a 20x, but I put in a tiny amount of money. It's a very long story for another time. So of course a 20x I would be great with, but these 2 would pay back all my angel investments, right? So for me, I'm okay with it. And all my angels in that group are the same way. Like, we do this as a hobby. We think it's fun. We get to meet really cool people. We don't put in obnoxious amount of money. Like, I put in between, I think my average check size was 10 to 50. It's not big money in the end, right?
Can I ask some questions here? I'm very curious about a few things. So this seems like a whole strategy then. If I'm looking for $500,000 or less, first of all, let's say we take the example. I don't know if this is true, but if that even is appropriate, if I have a game that I want to make with less than $500,000, let's say that is appropriate, then I should not be talking to publishers. I should just be looking for angel investors, right? Is that how we're looking at it?
No. Okay. So now we get into the complicated matter of, even though I say that I have this attitude, that doesn't mean every angel has this attitude, right? We're all different. Some people may want to exit in 5 years or chase you down or follow you. Do your due diligence on the angels too. But I mean, I ultimately want to make money, right? That's still why I invest.
Of course. So what I'm getting at is, it would be better return on time if you targeted the angels, because they don't have as strict of a policy as the publishers currently do.
Yes, but now me and all these angels, right? Let's take one of the cases without mentioning the name, where we own 12% of the company. If this company gets sold for $10 million, that's still, 1.2 million. I said 12, yeah, not 12. $1.2 million that the founder loses. And also over time, if there are dividends and other payments or votes where we have access to actually voting, that could impact, the structure of the studio. So remember, your job is still to pay back the investor regardless of a publisher, VC, or an angel. Now, a publisher aren't allowed to make decisions inside your company. They don't take equity, which means if you have a really, really solid launch and you have a good strategy of your company and you sign with a publisher, that's non-dilutive capital, meaning you still own 100% of it with you and your co-founders. You haven't given out a single piece, which means if you eventually want to fundraise and you have a studio that either fits the VC model or you have other investors, you have a lot of equity to play with. And that also means you can raise multiple rounds, because the more you raise in the early stage, the less rounds you can make in the future. Because if you sell, let's say 20% as an angel, and then you get a seed investor for another 10, 15%, you don't have a lot of space left until you reach that 51% of a controlling stake in the company. So it's not all positive, right? You're still giving out a share of your business. So as you said, yeah, you could go for the full angel ticket, but what is your valuation? If you've never launched a game before, again, example, you don't have a publishing deal, you have no personal cash investment. I'm speaking about the general pitches that I get in my inbox. You're not worth a lot to me. And I'm definitely not going to give you $500,000 with my friends if you have nothing. So you still have to be at a certain level where, you come in. So me and my angels normally invested around 3-4 million valuation and always had a playable. So that means you could raise 500K because that's like 15%, right? But still, going back, remember you're giving out equity. Make sure you also have good contracts. Make sure you don't give them deciding votes. I mean, if you should always have all the power with you, and make sure that they don't have too much control that early. It's a really big hassle sending out reports to your investors, updating them about everything, involving them in every process and decisions and all this kind of stuff. All of this can be resolved, legally speaking, by doing good contracts and agreeing with your investors, but still, it's not all, good. There are bad angels too. I just happen to have accepted the fact that this is what I was happy to do. And I don't know if all my co-investors, I don't speak to them on a weekly or a monthly basis, are as happy as I am. But,
I just wanted to highlight that because it was probably something that, because I go to these, specifically the indie studios when I speak to them at the gaming conferences, and they always go for the big $500,000 to $1 million a year, million budget, and they only target publishers. I'm like, I don't know if you're there with this type of game, right? So I just wanted to highlight that it's an option, but from the sound of it, it doesn't mean it doesn't come with the pros and cons.
I mean, so in my DevCom talk, I don't know if they're going to allow me to upload it, but I actually have 2 slides where I talk about how to build a company from scratch using the angel model, where I even show a cap table, where I basically show that this is your ideal percentage in your angel round, ideal percentage in your seed round, ideal percentage in your Series A, and my model guarantees that you still own 51%.
Are they obvious numbers? Can you wrap them off or no?
No, it's too late. It's 11 p.m. Too late in the evening.
Hey, my job is to ask the question.
No, but I'm pretty sure I can share the DevCom one, and if I can't, I'm going to do that speaker session again. I was very happy with it, so it will come out in some way or form. And again, we want to, with Agora, we want to upload as many free templates as possible in the future. So
definitely worth doing. Like the amount of people who are asking for it is crazy.
Yeah, but no, you really have to think about equity, guys. Like the long term, taking too many investors in the early stage will hurt you in the long run. Because most VCs, if you go to VC route, they usually want a 20% stake in a board seat. Not all of them at all. So I know some VCs might be like, hey, what are you talking about? But I haven't seen a single VC asking for less than 10% in an early round. So they're still going to have a significant chunk. And most of them ask for board seats. And if they don't, they want some sort of other control or input into your budgets or something else that you need to do.
Alrighty. We've hit an hour mark, so I'm about to do something. So
I'm happy to continue. It's your show. So
we will continue. It's just before we basically we're going to move into rapid fire Q&A because I find that to be the most fun. But before we do that, I'm going to give Pontus the floor a little bit as we're at peak viewers now. So if anyone's watching, can you just give me a few call to actions? Like, what should people do if they want to either learn more about you? What are you looking for right now that maybe someone can help you with?
Okay, yes, I'm not good at talking short sentences. Let me think about this. No, but so for those of you who know me from before, you've probably seen my face during my Global Top Run era. If you're unfamiliar, I left them in April. That was a pre-seed accelerator company. We did 64 investments. Still talk to some of the studios today. Still friends with the founders, etc. I left to start my own company with my co-founder Jacques Benchetry, who's an ex-banker. It's a very different background for myself. We're basically an investment bank / advisory. We do M&A, publishing, fundraising, and we have a license to do this as well. And we are currently not really looking for anything. So again, trying to keep it short. We wanted to be different. We wanted to work with a very small amount of studios. There's a lot of banks, agents, services out there, and a lot of them sign a lot of clients. We wanted to do it differently and only signing a very small amount. So a maximum of 3 to myself, 3 to Jacques, and potentially another partner in the future. Right now we have Songbin, who a couple of you have met and know, who also has his own clients on the indie side. And that's our maximum. We wanted to cap it. We work on all clients together, by the way. But the point here is that, there's a lead assigned, but we all work together. We wanted to really work side by side and close with all the clients that we work with and provide, top-notch services and help you scale. In order to do that, we had to cap it, which is why, even though I get amazing pitches into my inbox every day, we simply are at capacity. As I mentioned, we did close a deal at 3 a.m. this morning. So technically, we would have room for maybe an indie game to help out with. And that client was an indie game. So when we started Agora, very frankly speaking, we weren't going to work with indie. I've worked with indie my whole career. I love indie games. But I wanted to help the AA developers that were struggling, because there are so many AA developers struggling, and you're seeing a new one close down every day nowadays, pretty much. What I learned is that nobody's signing AA developers at the moment. So it's really tough to find publishers giving you 5 million checks, 10 million checks, 15 million checks. And of course, me, who is supposed to help you grow your business, if I can't do that, what am I going to do for you, right? So we still work with AA, but on a longer spectrum, where it may not be day-to-day interactions, but we're working a lot of strategy, corp dev, stuff like that, where we're really building the future of the company. But we have decided to work with a couple of indies anyway. And I'm saying this because I know some of you, because I can see some names here that actually saw my talk in Reboot in April. And I mentioned how we were going to focus on AA. Well, it's changed a bit. We're okay with indie as well. We're happy to help. If it's a kick-ass game, sounds great to me. We are going to have a new website very soon where everything's going to be public. Our fees, how we work. So it's going to be fully transparent. For those of you who have seen me speak, I speak very bluntly and almost leaked some stuff earlier. So our company is going to be the same. Our fees are the way we work. Everything will be public on our website when we have time to get to it. But if you email us and you're like, how does it work? It will all be transparent. So it's going to be a very clean cut. Yeah, maybe one indie game. We are working on something really, really cool that I told Harry before the podcast, but I can't tell you about yet. But there's going to be another initiative that a lot of you in here are going to be very interested in.
And you're going to post about it on LinkedIn. So the call to action to that is follow Pontus.
Yes, follow me.
Because from the sound, there's a lot of cool stuff happening relatively not too long away. There you go. That's my way of saying that. Okay. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but no, that's Agora, and you can find me on LinkedIn. I use Twitter a lot, not anymore after Elon Musk acquired it, but I still follow all the game devs. I still use the screenshot Saturday, all this kind of stuff. So I'm still on Twitter a lot. So if you DM me there, I'll be there. So LinkedIn and Twitter is where I live. I don't use any other platforms except email, of course. And if you want to pitch us anything, you send an email to scouting@agoragamingpartners.com. But I'm going to preface this and say we're 5 people. Any pitches you send, we do not have time to provide feedback straight up. We do not, because we have to work with our current clients. So one of 2 things are going to happen. If we really like it, we'll ask you for a call. And if not, you're going to get a copy-paste thing saying we don't have time and we sadly cannot provide you feedback. At Global Top Round, we always provide feedback. At Agora, I wanted to do it, but we're not big enough. We don't have time, so I want to say that right away.
But you do see them.
We do see them. We see all of them. We look at everything.
There you go.
If you type something like urgent or important in the email where you need help with reviewing a publisher agreement, getting some advice on recoup shares, investment terms without NDAs, just no names, happy to do it for free. We will always do that.
Sweet, that's a nice offer. I thought you were about to say, don't do that. And then you said do that. Oh, sweet.
No, I mean, like if you need any sort of help in that regard, and if it's urgent and you have deals on the table, happy to provide like free tips. That's something we will always do because industry growing, industry getting better is better for all of us. So
nice.
Absolutely no problem.
So
see, those 5 minutes. I'm not good at saying it short.
Give me a 1 minute elevator pitch. But no, there was a lot of good stuff there. So the email to repeat, scouting at
agoragamingpartners.com. Yeah.
Nice. I'll put that.
And if you have a game and you are 15 months from launch, you should pay extra attention and send me something really nice.
There you go.
I'll tell you something more in a couple of weeks.
I mean, that's pretty much as much info as everyone needs here, and whoever's watching that on replay should know.
Yep.
Cool, amazing. And before we go into Q&A, this is Harry's turn to flex. Anyone who's joined halfway through, the recap will come on Saturday if you're on the newsletter called Gaming Rally. I'm going to swap places and put my finger there. If you scan that, it will take you to a landing page, but basically weekly newsletter where me and my good partner, Ali Farha, will share what we've learned just about building a better gaming life. And also all these podcast recaps go to people who are subscribed. So if you go to gamingrally.net, you get it. And my 10-second pitch, my day job is, yes, I have this podcast every week, but I also ghostwrite for gaming CEOs. So if you're a CEO and you want your LinkedIn done for you, you can also hit me up in the DMs and I can tell you more about that. So I'll leave that QR code there. I see 3-4 people scanning, which is lovely. And then we'll go straight into Q&A. Alrighty. I got some questions from about 40 minutes ago. So we're going to just bash through them. And then we're going to go through the questions I see in the chat. If anyone's got a question that they asked a while ago, feel free to just say it again. It will just give me more chances of looking at it. But Pontus, in the conscious of time, let's say we have 20 minutes. Let's do these quick fire.
I will try.
So this is from Jad, who I've played his game actually from Gamescom. So his question is, aren't publishers missing out on great game projects by only being interested down the line? We're out of COVID now. There's been some time to recruit.
Exactly. And I don't know if you heard my full answer, but that's what I'm saying, that they're all missing out. But that's, at the end of the day, it's a corporate. They get their decisions from above. They get their budgets from above, most of them anyway, except the indie ones. But since most of you are looking for 1 to 3 million based on my inbox, you're talking about the ones who send a lot of money. They have their specific rules. So if you come and pitch them 1 million now and they don't have that money this year, they can't sign you. Next year, they might have 1 million and they might want you. And then they missed out on the opportunity. And that's why I am 90% certain, that's a big statement, that maybe a year and a half from now, we're going to be in a situation where publishers don't have enough games signed for their slate. And there's going to be a signing spree. So yes, they miss games all the time. So did I, by the way. I missed a lot of games. So
okay. So there's hope and there's caution in that answer, but I like it. Alrighty. Question from Alex Caruso. Do you think VR games could be a new investment area for VC and publishers in the near future? I have thoughts on this, but I'm wondering what's yours.
I used to work a little bit with HTC a couple of years ago, and I knew the tech wasn't ready. I'll say the same thing I always say, that the tech's too expensive. There's not enough games, and the tech's too expensive. And the problem is, until there are more games, it's going to be a problem, and until it gets cheaper, it's going to be a problem. So how do you get there? We have the chicken and egg problem again, just like in the mobile industry that we talked about briefly. So I would say that the model nowadays, if you're a studio, is to find half your funding from Meta or some other company, because they're very frugal about giving you money to develop games. I personally love VR games, but I would never touch it with a stick on the investment side. Sorry to say. It's not a good business model because the market's too small. But I love VR games. AR, I have no... what I've seen one time was this tabletop game where you could move pieces in AR.
Yeah, I saw that.
Really cool. Really cool, but that's what board games are for. I'd rather play my board game. So, I'm not a good answerer to this question, I guess.
I mean, I just saw End Dreams. They've done a bunch of layoffs, a bigger VR studio. So I would echo those points. This is basically bankrolled by Meta and Apple, I believe.
Yes.
All right.
You can be lucky. Beat Saber, right? But it's very...
Beat Saber is super hot. Those are my two examples of they actually made money on their own. The rest, weird. All righty. From Manny Hashi, how does one become an indie darling? Is it networking alone?
Good question. How do we? I guess it depends on what your definition of indie darling is, but I think the Manor Lords developer is a great example. Like interacting with your, like clearly, okay, maybe now I'm judging, but I believe that the developer is introvert. It seems so because they don't show up on a lot of interviews and they don't do a lot of camera stuff. But they're
And the way
talking
he
to the
tweets
community
as well.
and all the time engages with the community. So just by the fact that he's engaging with the community on Twitter or Discord all over the place practically makes him an indie darling because there's a lot of introverts in the gaming space, like a lot, right? So engaging, talking, feedbacking with your community is one great way. If you're talking about the B2B side, again, I have to come down and say that honesty is still key. Don't be an asshole. Like really, it's easy not to be an asshole in my opinion. And as long as you're a good person that tries to help people behind the scenes, eventually you'll find somebody like me or other publishers and investors that can vouch for you and that gets you into the right room where you get the chance to pitch your game and that can get you somewhere. So B2B side is really just don't be an asshole, do your best, be honest, present your game any opportunity possible where you can. And there are so many good people and they don't get enough credit. Like Eve from Focus Entertainment is one of my favorite people in the world. And he's always so friendly with, developers and answering everybody. And there are so many, not as good as Eve, of course, Eve, but good enough that you can find in the industry. So,
there you go. Yeah. So network, yes, and
yes,
be engaged with the community is definitely a plus.
Yes.
Alrighty. This is a very open question from Martin. And I think it's true, but I don't know how much more to add. Isn't the market already saturated with live service games?
100%. It has been oversaturated for years, but you still see games like Space Marines 2, which is an incredible game, by the way. Buy it if you haven't. I played the whole campaign last Sunday because I had early access with my team.
Did you invest in
the whole thing in one day? I wish, but no. It's a Focus game, right? So it was Focus, Saber, and...
oh, wow.
Yeah. But yeah, so either way,
this came out like 10 days ago.
Yeah.
I
absolutely loved it.
Anyone who's just like me who doesn't know, it's got 60,000 reviews, 9 out of 10 on Steam. That's crazy.
Yeah,
$60.
Wow. I mean, really, this is a good example of, this is not really the traditional live service games. It's not free to play, but it does have DLCs. It has upcoming season passes. I mean, this is basically a premium live service game, right? And same as Helldivers. If you look at Helldivers numbers, they went massively up.
Yeah, I saw that today.
Crashed. Yep, but now they did a patch that the community really loved, and their CCU went up almost 3 times. So if you do a good live service game, there's room for you. And you don't need to, service the game for the next 10, 20 years. It's going to be really hard for you to compete with the Blizzards and the etc., right? But I think there's always room for a good live service game. But of course, these two are bad examples in the way that these are both $20 million plus budgets, most likely. I don't know the exact budget of either game, but they're definitely in the higher end. So, of course, if you are a so-called indie darling, it's not going to be as easy for you. But even Manor Lords is going to probably be in early access for maybe 3 years or so. It's going to have continuous updates, and the player base is going to go up, and then it's going to go to shit, so to speak, lack of a better word. And it's going to go up again. I mean, that's the story of any live service game. So
I like it.
Just don't do, pay to win if you're targeting primarily a Western audience. That's something I don't think will ever work.
Yeah,
but,
agreed. Alrighty. Next question. So it is... Interesting question. What's your take on VR, AR, Web3? So we'll tackle the Web3 part of this question. You think about the prospects of the US region where costs are huge, and what are your thoughts on the prospects of Asia and Southeast Asia regarding B2P games?
Since it's quickfire, this is almost impossible to quickfire, but I mean, we talked about VR and AR briefly.
Yep.
Web3, I'm...
Be honest, Pontus.
Yeah, but there are things you should say and shouldn't say on streams. I have invested into Web3 companies myself. I owned Solana for a very long time. I owned Bitcoin, but I would never touch it with a stick outside of my personal investments because it was just diversification. I have angel investments in video games. I own uranium and other nuclear energy. I own some other traditional stocks in medtech, and I bought some Web3 stuff. So I like to diversify my money because that's just how I am as an investor. Other than that, the only thing that I can say is that the idea of a like a currency outside of the government's grasp, so to speak, is really cool. I'll just leave it there.
Yep.
If it gets proven, if it becomes that, great. Bitcoin being digital gold sounds good to me. That's cool and all. If we speak about games, 99.9% of them are all scams. And this is a comment I probably shouldn't say on streams, but I swear I lose IQ 50% of the time speaking to people from Web3 because they have no idea what a video game is, how to produce one, what it entails, or anything whatsoever. The other 50%, I speak to very smart people like in any industry, but I've never been in an industry with so many scammers and people who have no clue what they're talking about like Web3. It's really sad. I think it's getting a lot better. I think a lot of the scammers have been outed. I think that a lot of the studios are shutting down. A lot of rugs, as the Web3 people like to say, rug pulls.
Yep.
And I think we're going to keep getting better and better. But I mean, the thing is, the investors made money, most of them, because they got in really early at a very small cent on the dollar per coin.
The word Ponzi comes to mind when I...
Yeah, and they dumped it on all of you retail investors, and the investors are happy. The studios took their money and they left, and then nothing else.
Sad. Sad scam game.
Yes, I really believe in the idea of Web3 technology and its future, but the way it's being utilized, their innovations they talk about have been in the industry for 20 plus years. Like when I think I heard somebody 2 or 3 years ago explaining to me how the trading system works. And when I told him that this existed in the World of Warcraft auction house like 20 years ago, he just got stumped and was like, no, but we're using layer 3 technology, blah, 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 this, that. And I was like, exactly my point. We did it without blockchain technology. Why do you need it? But there are tons of cool stuff in Web3. So let me leave it there. I hate when the general market gets taken advantage of and loses money. But you can't pull them all over. But you can't put them all over one line. There are many really, really smart people in Web3. Just less.
Yeah, I like the way you answered that. I'll put that there.
Putting me on the spot with you. Now I'm going to get a bunch of haters.
Hey, this is Q&A, Pontus. You decide the answers. I'm just giving questions. Chris Gibson, can I get the recording of this, please? You can. If you haven't already, scan that. And also, this is a podcast. It's available on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And I've posted the link in the chat. Just H Foku. Please enjoy. That is my 2 second of selling. Amazing. Okay. So if I got a question from Dean. Hey, Pontus. So say that we have a prototype for a game that is just a $350,000, I'm guessing, dollar budget. Sorry. That may or may not just landed in your inbox. Follow up. So what is a VC out of the question here?
So I've seen your pitch decks, right? And I still owe you an answer, Dean, from your email from like 3 months ago. So again, I already told you by email, I'm sorry about that. And I did see your new deck. It's right now with Songbin, I think. So for those of you unaware, our head of games is his title. He always looks at everything first, but usually I take a sneak peek anyway. But he needs to pass him first. So I know that he's looking at it. As for the second part of your question, yeah, a VC investing a $350K budget, I mean, we're talking pre-seed investors and angels here, not a VC. But your question doesn't ask me whether or not you're talking equity or product finance here. I mean, there are product finance VCs that could do it because it's a very small budget. I mean, Kowloon Knights is a great one, product finance company. But if you're talking about doing a VC round, the way you should look at it is that VC rounds are normally 2 million and above. That's when you can talk to the venture capital. You have to think about it this way again. Now I'm continuing to talk over. But when you have a $50 to $100 million fund and you need to return all that money times several times over, you don't have the time for a small check. Because even if it 10, 20x's, it's not enough money. That's my simple answer, which is not accurate, but it's a
logistical answer. It's just logistics. Yeah,
all the DD, the legal, everything, and then in the end, it only makes you $3 million, which sounds good, but not for a VC who needs to return, 300.
That makes sense. Alrighty.
Yeah.
We've got a question from Borislav. If you want to work with a publisher, is having a Steam page a double-edged sword? Should you get visibility pre-vertical slice, I'm guessing in terms of wish lists here, or just nail that demo?
It's a very subjective answer. So the answer is I don't know, and I'm not saying that because I don't know. I'm saying that because the publishers don't know. Because half of them say, if you don't have a Steam page and wish list, I don't want to talk to you. And half of them are like, wait, you started a Steam page without me. What am I going to do?
Really?
And I'm not kidding. Yes, this is the conversations that I've been having with publishers. So my opinion, which is countering that fact of a 50-50, is that Steam page and wish list is always good. But if your Steam page has been live for a year and you have 2,000 wish lists, that's bad. So, it really depends on how you do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, nail the demo. Nail the vertical slice. That's all you should care about, because in the end, that's what matters. I can say that if you remember my percentage scale on the budgets, this again could be inaccurate because I don't have the slide in front of me, but about 10%, or it could have been 15 out of those 100% publishers is looking for what they call engagement criteria now as well. So Steam followers, Twitter engagements, YouTube views, Steam wishlist, etc., is becoming a criteria that's slowly coming back to the publisher DD process. But so far between 10 and 15%. So not a lot more than that in at least my discussions.
Alrighty. I'll add my 2 cents here. I have coached someone who does TikTok end-to-end for indie developers. And the funnel is he makes clips, gets them into Discord, and then wishlist. So out of the box thinking, if you're worried about this, get people in a Discord. That is kind of halfway into a wish list in some sense. And then you can hopefully please both. So yeah, something to think about. If you can get people interested, pop them in a Discord maybe. Alrighty. Aaron Campbell, my former colleague. Can you share tips on securing partnerships or sponsorship deals in gaming?
Not anymore. I could have. My career used to be in esports, so I did a lot of sponsorship deals in my career. I actually got my first sponsorship at the age of 13. I walked up to the Logitech manager at DreamHack and I said, "Hello, I have 100 CCU. I want some gear, please." And it turns out that guy was the head of Europe. And within 2 weeks, I had a contract, and then they gave me 10, 20 Logitech devices per month for me to give out to my stream.
Nice.
Jokes aside, my last sponsorship deal that I did was probably it was quite recent. I still have a couple of 100,000 followers, so I did one I think 4 years ago, but I wouldn't count it as a sponsorship deal. But basically, I got a free MSI laptop and then I reviewed it on my channel.
Nice.
So really, I am not. I cannot advise you at this time. I could tell you everything about how good I was 7 years ago, but the industry is nothing like that anymore. Esports has changed drastically. I'm assuming you're speaking esports, by the way, since you said partnerships and sponsorships. If you're speaking more podcasts, like for example this podcast, and things like that, I also do not know. I would assume that the model that Indie Game Business does, Jay Powell, where you have like this large developer newsletter, the large publisher newsletter, and in Harry's case, I assume more C-suites, etc. You would need to find sponsors that fit that criteria, right? But yeah, I'm not your guy anymore. Long time ago.
But it was a good story. And yeah, just Dean Day coming in by saying it's a new deck, just to make you.
New deck. Oh god, I'm gonna open my superhuman here.
Nice. And
I see it. I'll look at it later.
There you go. I mean, hey, Dean, you're welcome, huh? I've given you direct access to the man here. Aaron Campbell again. This is actually a good one. Like, we didn't actually touch it. Like, when it comes to negotiating a better deal, especially when we're introverts, I guess, what do people... I'm going to frame the question as, like, what do people get wrong, usually, when it comes to negotiating?
By the looks of it, this is one of the last questions, so I can go a bit longer, I assume.
Yeah, you know what? So, final question.
Yeah, so being an introvert is not a problem. But it will be a problem if you're looking to work with VCs and you want to raise several rounds, because again, speaking on the VC case, you're looking at doing a seed round, and then you would want to do a Series A to scale, and then you want to make larger and larger games. And if you're an introvert and that you're not capable of sitting in a room with a board and a lot of investors, the chances are you're not the right person for the job. So why I'm bringing this up, even though investors is not part of your question, is just to go back to that. The whole space, when it comes to investors, this is important. you need to be a VC CEO, so to speak. Not initially, you can learn that over time, but that's why you see a lot of studios where when the company is raising more money, eventually the original CEO gets replaced by somebody who's more PR approachable and who can manage all the investors and deal with all the trouble and admin and accounting. And then the person who created the company can focus on the games. Very, very common on the investor side. With the publishers, that doesn't matter. What they care about is making a return on the game. If you're introvert or not is irrelevant, because most introverts are really good at many other things, like analysis or backing up their arguments or explaining the game design, whether orally or in a document. So it doesn't really matter on the personality side for publishers and platforms from what I've seen. Sorry. So what tips do I have in general would be that, I mean, the obvious one, the later stage your game, the better terms you get. It's a very simple cut one. The more money you put in, the better. The more research you have, the more wish list you have, like all the regular boring stuff. The later you are, the more data you have, the better deal you get. This is for platforms, it's for publishers. The other part would be digging into that risk, showing them that you've done proper risk management based on your cash flow, your production risks, based on the investment from the partner, and why you think these terms are fair. It's always going to be a back and forth between the publisher and you, but you need to explain if you want a higher cut rev share, this is why. And for example, I've done some deals where there's either a bonus based on X amount of copies, or there is a higher increase in rev share over time. And then I would have to back that up with data that, for example, technically the addressable market is, let's say, 500,000 units. And that's what you're investing in. But what if you reach 1 million units? I still made the game. I want to make more money. So then I would negotiate additional steps here, right? Because if we reach above the publisher's 3x and their forecast, and we reach above our own, I want to be paid more. Nice. So you should think about the long tail as well. Long tail is very important. Most publisher agreements are 7 years long. 5, 7, 10. Try to go for as low as possible, of course, where it usually auto-renews based on a certain amount of revenue. Make sure that revenue is substantial, meaning that if you can do a better job yourself, you're not happy. So that number should probably be at a minimum of 100 grand a year, bare minimum. If it's below that, I'm pretty sure if you sat on your ass and did nothing and you'd made a discount every now and then, you'd make more money than the effort the publisher would put in. So there are a lot of these finer details that you forget in the publishing agreement and the platform agreements that you cannot do in the end. So to pivot over to platforms, most of them is a short-term exclusivity on just subscription platforms, if you're talking about Game Pass and PlayStation Plus and all this kind of thing, which is fine. But remember, if you put yourself on Game Pass, most of those people are using Steam. That is a very large market. So that juicy check of $1 million or whatever might look really nice, but what if you get 1 million players activating Game Pass? And to flip back to simple math, 100,000 copies at $20 SRP would then be basically the same amount of money. Is that worth it? So when you're looking at platforms, what I tend to say to our clients and in general is, if you're going to sign a platform deal, make sure it covers 100% of the whole budget. So you're break even day one, and then you're making money. And then usually with the platforms, you can renegotiate when there's an expiration for additional cash as well. So after the 6 or the 12-month period, you can ask for a renewal and more money if you want to, or of course you can terminate. But if you, for example, take a platform deal that only covers 30% of your whole budget, but your addressable market is 2, 3, 4 million people, you're losing a lot of cash. It's good on paper. Yeah, I got 1 million in my bank today. But 1 million in my bank today or 4 million in my bank a year from now, what would you take?
And this is the risk-averse option I'm hearing.
Yes, my colleague Jack loves to do the example where he asks the interviewer or the Q&A person, would you have $100 or $105 today, or 110 or 120? And eventually, the interviewer will always say, oh yeah, 130 next year. Sounds good. That's a 30% yearly increase in money. That's a big increase. If you look at a regular stock portfolio, 30% is great. Think about platforms the exact same way.
I like that. Yeah.
$100 in your pocket today, or do you want $130 next year, which is a 30% increase?
And this could be a 4x multiple, so it's like 400%.
Yes,
essentially.
Could be 400%, could be a lot more. And in most cases with Game Pass and these different companies, we are talking about either a failure and you're very happy you got the Game Pass money.
Yes, thank you, please.
Yeah, or the one where you're like, oh my God, all my players are on platforms. What do I do now? But I have to say that I think what Microsoft and Game Pass did was part of the reason why we got so many awesome games in the last couple of years. Without Game Pass and these things, we would have seen way less games in the market. So I think it was really good timing for Microsoft, and I think they helped a lot of developers make their dreams come true. So just want to mention that I think they did a good job. And a lot of the games that I worked with as well, I don't remember how many Game Pass deals we had, but probably 7 or 8. Was very helpful.
Yeah, and we've recruited for a couple as well, and like without it, they wouldn't have existed, those studios. Let's put it that way. Alrighty, we have come to time.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say I can continue, but I think we've
we've come to time. You've generously given 90 minutes. I have a cheeky question from Lim. I'm going to give him it. It's a quick one. We're presenting playtest data in our pitch deck, simple scoring for visual gameplay, etc., to a publisher. What's a good sample size for it to be considered trustable?
So that is a good example. I've known Lim for a very long time. I'm pretty sure it's you, right? Your picture is too small that I can't see.
Lim Quang Meng, game developer.
That's you. Yeah, so Lim is one of those people who I've seen him pitch me every year for 4 years, and every year it gets better, and he does not give up, which is great. Keep going, Lim. Every year I see an updated pitch, and every year I see you building something better. So, just keep at it. And I'll be in Malaysia in 2 weeks, so I guess I'll see you there, most likely at Level Up. But to answer your question, I guess I can. Let me answer it flip side. Less than 100 people is not a good enough data set. I can't tell you what a good data set is, because the answer is as much as possible. But I can tell you that less than 100 is a bad sample size. If you do an interview or a survey with 10 people, you're not going to get good enough answers or data to have a qualified guess. So bare minimum 100, ideally 200 to 500 maybe. And of course, depending on your target market. So we haven't talked about this in today's podcast, but remember, you only have to be successful in one single country in the world to make millions of dollars in video games. You do not have to target every single country in the world. Just a Southeast Asian country, for example, 10% of that market is $10 million. So with that in mind, when you're doing this data set, 100 people from 100 different countries won't help you either. Right? So what is your addressable market in regards to genre and demographics? That's where your data set should be. I don't want to see 40 players from India on a simulation strategy game, because they don't play simulation strategy games on PC. So it's very important that you have the right countries and demographics for your data set as well. And I know there was a question earlier about markets, so I just wanted to mention that you do not need to be successful across the globe. Focus instead on a limited amount of countries and hyper-focus in those.
Love that answer. Amazing. Pontus, thank you so much. This was really fun. Hope you enjoyed it. How was it for you?
No, great. I mean, I almost messed up there earlier, so hopefully we can cut that out in editing. No, it was good. I mean, a lot of questions, which I'm always very happy to see. So hopefully I helped a lot of you. It's always really hard when we talk about a lot of topics, because I also talk too much. So it's it's tough to dig super deep, but hopefully it was good enough in some ways or form.
As someone who's done this before, it was very, very good, and there was some nice insights. I've even got a couple thank you DMs, which is always a good sign. So there you go. So lovely. Final kind of call to action. We've still got a lot of people who started are still here. So everyone, please follow Pontus for more to come. And if you are new to me, follow me.
Yeah, like LinkedIn, Twitter, email, and I'll be at Level Up KL in 2 weeks. I'm going to speak there, apparently. I was just confirmed yesterday, so now I'm going to KL, so I'll be there. Otherwise, I will see some of you at Gamescom Asia as well. I'll be there too. So that's my next 2 events in case you want to say hi face-to-face.
Amazing. Pontus, thank you so much.
Thank you, Harry, for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure.